My name is Mark, and I have always considered myself a rational person. I'm a journalist by trade, drawn to uncovering the truth behind the mysteries of our world. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the events that transpired in Pine Hill, a small, seemingly idyllic town tucked away in the heart of rural America. What I encountered there defied all logic and left me with more questions than answers, a true horror that haunts me to this day. It all began when I received a tip about a series of unexplained disappearances in Pine Hill. Over the past decade, more than a dozen people had vanished without a trace, leaving behind no clues and no bodies. The local authorities had no leads, and the case had grown cold. Intrigued by the enigma, I decided to investigate, hoping to uncover the truth behind these chilling events. As I drove into Pine Hill, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quaint town. The streets were eerily quiet, and an unsettling stillness hung in the air. I checked into the only motel in town, a rundown establishment that seemed to have seen better days. The receptionist, an elderly woman with a wary expression, handed me my key and warned me to stay indoors after dark. I ventured out into the night, determined to gather information. I spoke with several locals, but most were reluctant to discuss the disappearances, their eyes darting nervously as if fearing they were being watched. One man, a retired police officer named Tom, agreed to meet me at a local diner and share what he knew. Tom's face was lined with age and worry as he recounted the details of the case. He spoke of how the victims, ranging from young children to the elderly, had vanished without a trace. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence left behind, just an eerie silence that enveloped the town. Tom's voice trembled as he described the fear that had gripped Pine Hill, a fear that seemed to grow with each passing year. Determined to find answers, I decided to visit the last known location of one of the missing persons, a young woman named Lisa, who had disappeared while hiking in the nearby Pine Hill forest. The locals avoided the forest, claiming it was cursed, but I was undeterred. The next morning, I set out for the forest, armed with a map and a flashlight. The dense canopy of trees blocked out the sunlight, casting the forest in an eternal twilight. As I ventured deeper into the woods, an overwhelming sense of unease washed over me. The air grew colder, and the silence was deafening. Hours passed, and I found myself hopelessly lost. The path I had been following seemed to vanish, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I tried to retrace my steps, but the forest seemed to shift around me, disorienting me further. Just as panic began to set in, I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an old, decrepit cabin, its wooden boards warped and weathered by time. Desperation drove me to seek shelter inside. The cabin was dark and musty, filled with the scent of decay. As I explored the single room, my flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. In the corner, I noticed a worn journal lying on a dusty table. I opened it, hoping to find some clue about the cabin's history. The journal belonged to Lisa, the woman who had disappeared. Her entries started off innocently enough, detailing her hikes and her love for the forest. But as I read further, her tone grew frantic. She wrote about hearing voices, seeing shadows moving between the trees, and feeling an oppressive presence that watched her every move. The final entry was chilling. Lisa described how she had found the cabin while trying to escape the forest. She wrote of a figure that appeared in the clearing, a tall, shadowy silhouette with glowing eyes. She felt drawn to it, unable to resist its pull. The last words scrawled in her journal were, "It's here. I can't escape." A cold dread settled over me as I realized I was not alone. The temperature in the cabin plummeted, and I heard the faint whisper of voices echoing through the walls. My flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. Heart pounding, I stumbled towards the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on the back of my neck. I turned, and in the dim light of the moon filtering through the cracked window, I saw it, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes, just as Lisa had described. I don't remember how I got out of that cabin. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the edge of the forest, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees. Shaking and disoriented, I made my way back to town, my mind racing with what I had experienced. Back at the motel, I tried to make sense of it all, but the memories were a jumbled mess of fear and confusion. The locals were tight-lipped, and even Tom seemed reluctant to discuss the forest any further. I left Pine Hill soon after, my investigation cut short by the terror I had faced. Years have passed since that fateful trip, but the nightmare of Pine Hill Forest still haunts me. I've shared my story with others, but no one has been able to provide an explanation. The disappearances continue, and the town remains shrouded in mystery. I don't know what I encountered in those woods, and perhaps I never will. The enigma of Pine Hill lingers, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved.